Hey everyone, it's Jack, and today I'm going to take a look at Fedora 37 Beta RC 1.6 to be exact. Fedora 37 is due to be out quite soon, this month I believe. I forgot the exact date right off the top of my head, but regardless, I want to take an earlier look at this. Now, it's not unusual for Fedora to be a little bit late when they come out with their new releases. That's not really a new thing. I think this time it might be a little bit later than normal, and if I understand correctly, it's because a new version of OpenSSL is coming out and they wanted to hold out for the new version because the current version of OpenSSL apparently has some type of exploit. So the team felt that it was best to just wait it out a little bit longer for that release, and then they would just get that put in there and tidy up any other remaining issues and be good to go. However, we can get the beta, and that's what I'm going to do. But, you know me, I'm half rebel, so instead of just getting the beta that's on the public link, I'm going to actually go out and dig a little deeper and get actually the newest beta, the nightly build. And let's explore, because it's so far along now, we might as well just go for the big tomato. So here I am. All I got to do is go down here to Fedora Workstation and then select Download Now. And then over here we see a link to the beta. However, we can also scroll down farther and go to where it says, but wait, there's more. And there is, because if we go here, there's a little link right here where it says, check out other Fedora Workstation downloads here. So I'm going to click this little here, and also I'm going to have the link in the description below so you can get it a lot easier. And so now I'm just going to go down to where we have testing images. And here we have nightly builds and then other, which includes the beta. So I'm going to go to view images. And then I'm going to select RC 1.6. 1.5 is the one that's currently available on the link on the website. And that's from October 31st. This 1.6 is from November 3rd. Yesterday is the time of this video. And so clicking on that, I'm going to select Workstation and then x86_64. That's what most people would need, unless you got like a Mac or something. Then you might want to try the ARM. And here we are. So this is our ISO right here, Fedora Workstation Live x86 64-37 1.6 ISO. So I'm going to click on this, load it in, and let's check it out. Okay, here I am at the boot menu, and I'm going to arrow up here to start Fedora Workstation Live 37. The other one will test the media, so if you don't want to sit around waiting for the media to be tested, just arrow up to this choice, the first one on the list, and then I'll just hit enter. This should be booting into our live edition, or it might stop halfway through and give us an installer. I'm not quite sure yet. So I'll let this boot in and see what happens. So there's our Fedora logo. That's looking good with the familiar spinner and Fedora cool splash screen there. And now I think we're going to be coming into the screen. Oh, and here we are. Okay, so it does have our choices, so we can hit try Fedora if we want to just try it out and look around, or get right to it and install to the hard drive. And I flipped a coin in advance and it came up heads, and I just happened to pick heads. That was really weird. So that means I get to install it directly. So I'm going to just select that choice. And then I think it's going to go into an installer. Or maybe that was just like a, I'm just going to let you know reminder screen. And maybe. So here we got, yes, it is starting. So I wasn't sure there for a minute, but it is starting up and looking good, defaulting to English US. That works for me. And so I'm going to hit continue. And now we select the system here. We got the little orange triangle, so that means that needs to be addressed. So I'm going to hit that. And then you can see that our disk here is selected by default. I unselected it when I clicked on it, but I reselected it. And so I'm going to hit done here. And then that's giving us our information on the hard drive, and it's saying that we got to reclaim space because there's already something installed on this drive, and so that's good. I'm just going to click reclaim space right there, and then it's showing the layout of our hard drive and the different partitions. So what we want to do, and of course you want to do this if you don't want to keep your data. If you want to keep your data, you don't want to do this because it'll erase it. So anyways, I'm going to select delete all and then select reclaim space, the button down towards the bottom. And that should reclaim everything, and now everything looks okay. No more orange funky signs or check marks or triangles. And so now everything is ready to go, so we can hit our begin installation button down here in the lower right corner. And we'll just do that now. And easy peasy. So now it's starting the install part. And so I think what it's going to do now is it's going to go ahead and install the system. We're going to reboot, and then I think it's going to ask for the rest of the information after that. So we'll see if that's the way it goes. I'm going to go ahead and pause the video, and then when it completes this, I'll be right back. What? Oh, it's done. Well, yeah, that took a while. I think it was about maybe 20 minutes, so it wasn't like a ridiculously long time, but yeah, that did take a little longer than expected, but it finally finished. So I'm going to hit finish install here, and then I'm assuming it's going to reboot and then kind of continue with the install. So we'll see. Or maybe it won't reboot. Maybe it'll do something else. It's a surprise. And it kind of looks like nothing else is happening, so I think I just need to manually restart it. So I'm going to shut this down, remove the install medium, and then boot right back in by doing this and hitting power off. Like that. So now I think what we're going to do is, after this splash screen is done doing its thing, then we're going to be continuing on with our install, probably asking for more information like creating a username and all that. So here comes something, and it's the welcome to Fedora 37 Linux 37. So I'm going to hit start setup here, and location services on by default, automatic problem reporting on by default, and I'm good with that, but you can turn those off if you don't want to share location services or problem reporting. And then third-party repositories, cool. So yes, I'm going to enable that. That's always handy to have that enabled. I believe that codecs probably are not there by default, but maybe. And then we have our online accounts. Cool. So I'm going to skip that. So it wasn't that cool. And now let's give ourselves a username and full name. So let's see, how about Toadwick? And then I'm going to go next. Enterprise login is something you can use if you have an online account that you want to sync with, a cloud thing and all that. So business environment, not relevant here. Going to hit next. And now let's create a password. And then next. And that's it. So we're done. I'm going to hit start using Fedora Linux, and then it should take us right in, or at least to a login prompt. Cool. So that was easy peasy, nothing to it. And here we are. Cool. So welcome to Gnome 43. Would you like to take a tour? Nah. Been on a lot of those. So here we see booted right into the activities screen. And if we click on this area, it'll take us right into the desktop. Here we have our typical Gnome desktop, but a really cool background. I like that wallpaper. That's really nice. Then we have our top bar, of course, with our clock up here, and then our power strip down here where we have our network settings, sound settings, and so forth, and also dark mode. So if you want to do dark mode, you can click on that, and whoa, it even makes the wallpaper in the dark mode. That's a little perk of GNOME, starting I think with 42. And then over here we got our settings shortcut, so when we click on that, it'll take us right over to our system settings. And then on this side, we got our activities menu. So this is what we saw when we first booted in, was the activities menu. Also, if you want to get there, a keyboard shortcut would be your super key, or some people know it as the Windows key. And when you press that, it takes you right in. If you want to go directly into the menu, you can press Super A, and that'll take you right into the menu. And so that's a shortcut to get into the menu if you want to get there. And then you can see your desktops up here, and just clicking on the desktop will take you back in. So we're going to come back to the settings there. But nice to know you have easy access to it. And also you have right click on the desktop. So if you want to change your background display settings or go back into your system settings, you can easily reach those right there on the desktop. But let's check out our activities in our menu first. In our panel here, we got Firefox, our calendar, files, file manager, and then our software center, our Gnome software. And if we hit files, I'm just going to open that real quick. And so this would be Nautilus here, I'm quite sure. Yep. So we're running files, which is kind of the Gnome project's branded Nautilus, basically. So cool. And then here we have our software center, and we can open that up as well. This is our Gnome software center, and this is how you can download new software. For any of you that are new to Linux, it's kind of equivalent to the software store or app store, like on your iPhone or the Android version, smartphone. So yes. And if we go in here, we can see all our different softwares. These are some previews of some recommended softwares that are popular, like Inkscape, of course, Evolution, Builder, and all that. So like if I was to click on Inkscape, being Fedora, this is probably the latest and greatest, reasonably so, and it's 1.2.1, so yes, that it is. I'm just going to hit install. We have Fedora Linux here, but we also enabled third-party repositories. So as you can see here, the Fedora Linux, by default, we got the Flatpak. So Flatpak is what it's looking for here, the 1.2, and also you can get it directly from the Fedora Repos here, the RPM version. And if we go down, it looks like it's the same version. So if you prefer the RPM version over the Flatpak, you just want to double check up here that is selected. Otherwise, you will get the Flatpak by default, it looks like. So I'm going to go with the RPM. I'm going to hit install. The RPM is smaller, kind of a smaller footprint, but there's a lot of reasons somebody might want to have a Flatpak. And there we are, fully installed, cool and groovy. So now it should just show up right in the menu, and if you remember right, Super A will take us directly into the menu, and there's Inkscape right there. So that is awesome. Installed without a problem. So when I hit that, then you can see the new version 1.2 is opening right up. And you can choose a template if you wish, or a new document. And then that's all there is to it. And the theming and everything looks perfect, so it really did come out good. And then if we go to About, here we can see that it is 1.2. Nice. And all our icons are styled just perfectly, and so the theming is really great with Fedora as usual. And then if we go back here, we can also double check our repos. So if we go up here to the burger menu in the upper right and hit software repositories, I just want to see if they have both RPMFusion repos in here. Here you can see Flatpaks are activated by default, so that's cool, probably because we chose the third party. And then we have our Fedora repos here, all connected to the 37 repos, our firmware, and then third party enabled here. So we got Copr and our FlatHub, Google Chrome, and then RPMFusion for non-free. So we want to add in the free too, because if you wanted to install something like, say, VLC player, if we were to look for it in here, it probably won't find it, because I think that's only available in the RPMFusion free repo as opposed to the non-free. So yeah, not finding it. I'm just going to go in here and open up the terminal real quick, and I'm just going to beef up the size here. Whoops. Yeah, I don't use Gnome a whole lot, but I'll just right click and do maximize. The buttons are gone. Yeah, those guys, those GNOME people, always a jokester. And so I'm going to just magnify this a bit here. And then, before I add the repo, let's take a look at our kernel. Wow, a brand new shiny kernel there, 6.06-300. Nice to see there. At the same time, I'm going to open up my Firefox and I want to load in the RPM repo. Really easy to do here on Fedora. Really all I ever do when I want to add the RPMFusion is I just pop in here and I'll just do a search for RPMFusion. And there it is. And I typically check the enabling RPMFusion repos here under Fedora docs. And there's probably even a shortcut right here in Fedora, but you know, I'm a Google person. So scrolling down here, you can see enable the free repository, enable the non-free. The non-free is already enabled, so this is the one we want here is the free repo. So I'm just going to highlight this whole thing here, right click and copy it, and then go back to my command prompt and paste it in and hit enter. It's that easy. And then just authenticate with your password. And if you forgot your password, you're SOL. But I'm sure you didn't. So this will just take a second here. It's going to refresh. And so what I'm doing now is updating the repos within the terminal here. You can also do it in the GUI, but it's just a lot faster to do it this way. And there we are. So it looks like it's kind of doing its thing. So we're just going to say yes here. And then that'll get everything synchronized and installed. So there we go. So now we have the RPMFusion. So now if I was going to look for it, and in the terminal, all I would have to do is type in sudo dnf install and then VLC, the name of our app. And now it should find it. It's going to resync here. And you can see that the free repo is there. And there we go. So now VLC does exist. So I'm going to hit Y and let that install. Easy peasy. So that's the first thing I like to do when I install Fedora is to add those RPMFusion, because without that you're going to be left out of the game with certain apps like VLC and I think maybe OBS Studio, codecs and all that. Those are all important if you really want to function like a 21st century millennial like me. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. Millennial, are you kidding me? You're a Gen Z. So there we go, it's almost there. And that did the trick. Excellent. So yeah, I'm kind of messed up without those buttons up there. I don't know what it is about GNOME and their people taking things away. Although you can actually turn those on in the settings, but yeah, still makes me laugh. So there we go with the RPMFusion. Excellent. Now if I was going to go in my menu and look for VLC player, it's right there. So it's all installed. Excellent. And then if we hit this little menu here, and then here you can see all our different apps that are installed. So we got our weather, clocks, Fedora Media Writer, which is really nice. So if you want to write an ISO to a little thumb drive or something, this makes it easy peasy. And then we have our maps, photos, LibreOffice Calc, videos, our utilities folder, boxes, which is a nice virtual machine environment. It's actually a front end, kind of a GTK front end for QEMU, KVM. It's actually pretty nice. I've used it before, and they do really simplify the whole process. If you're not real tech savvy, that really makes it a lot easier. Of course, if you're not real tech savvy, you might not be using a VM to begin with, but it does get you there quicker. LibreOffice Calc. Let's see what version this is. And I'm assuming it's probably one of the latest versions here. Should be quite new, being Fedora. That's one thing I like about Fedora is you get new stuff. So 7.41.2. Yeah, that looks good. Excellent. So LibreOffice, this is the Excel equivalent, which is Calc, and runs quite nicely actually. And we got our video player by default, calculator, Impress, which is equivalent to PowerPoint, and then we got our document scanner, settings, system monitor. So system monitor is also pretty nice. I kind of like the GNOME system monitor. It's pretty much like the task manager in Windows. So you got all your open processes here, pretty nice. And then our resources, which are looking good. Not using too much here. Only 40% CPU. That's great. Not. Actually, that's a temporary spike there, I think. Probably from all the other stuff that's running here in the background, especially my recording software and all that. And then our memory is showing 2.3 gigs out of 6.3 assigned to this. And then our file system showing all our partitions here on our hard drive. So that's pretty handy to know too if you're kind of a techie kind of guy. And then LibreOffice Writer, of course, which is equivalent to MS Word, Rhythmbox, Cheese, text editor, and then our tour. So if you need a tour to see kind of what's new, tour will kind of give you a little tour. And then here we got our calendar. And so our calendar app is really nice. This is cool. And here you can see it even has the weather embedded. So today is Friday, November 4th, and it's 65.5 degrees Fahrenheit. And it even shows the forecast for the next couple of days, which is really cool. I like that little touch there embedded into the calendar app. I think that's cool. So that's kind of like something I like seeing. And of course the calendar is a great way to just kind of put in all your events and upcoming memos and so forth. So very nice app. One thing I think that kind of shines in GNOME is the calendar app. So that's really nice as well. And now let's just right click and take a look at our settings real quick. And here we have our settings, and they're pretty much the typical GNOME settings that you probably see in every GNOME. So nothing in here that would just kind of be earth-shattering. But here we got showing our wired connection, and then our Bluetooth settings, our appearance settings. That's probably the most interesting part. So in here we got our dark. And as you can remember, I changed it to dark when we were up here in this menu here, and I selected the dark mode. And so that was reflected here. By default, it was on surprise default. But I'm kind of partial to the dark, so I kind of like that. And then down below there, you can select from a lot of different wallpapers that they have. And it looks like they got some pretty nice wallpapers in here to choose from. That's another one I like. Very cool. And my minimize buttons are gone, so I got to remember to right click and kind of go do something. Oh well, how about hide? Excellent. So there we are. So now we can see that looks a little better. And there's probably a keyboard shortcut for minimizing and maximizing the windows, but I just can't remember what it is right now. But that is our appearance settings, so easy peasy to do. And then if you have your own wallpapers you want to add in, you can select the add picture button there, and then you'll be right in. You can navigate right to the folder that you got your pictures in and select some more pictures. Then we have our notification settings, search settings for applications and locations and all that. So if you're really into searching for stuff, that is pretty handy to get in there and just kind of tweak it to your heart's content. And if you have a little bit of a potato of a computer, and sometimes the search, turning that off can speed up your computer a little bit. So if you're really short on resources, you could probably turn that off and see if maybe that speeds things up a bit. Then we have our multitasking settings, applications, and these are different notification settings like you would see on your phone, where you can add notifications, access to your applications. And then we have our privacy settings. We have our screen lock settings. Typically I set my delay up higher, like around 15 minutes or never, because it's kind of annoying when it blanks out for me. And I usually turn off screen lock because I find that to be kind of annoying too. But if you're in an office situation where you don't want people getting into your computer when you walk away, then it's probably a good thing to have on. But for me, just at home, I usually shut that off. And notifications, I typically shut that off too. Location services, I'm typically okay with having location services on. Frankly, I find it kind of handy, like if I'm using Mozilla and I'm doing a search and I'm going into like homedepot.com or something, it's kind of nice for them to like detect my location and hook me up with the right store that's nearby. And same with weather and all kinds of stuff. So I'm good with the location services. However, you can turn it off up here if you don't like that on there. And then of course we got our camera and microphone settings, file history and trash. If you don't want your file history showing up in your menu or in other places, you can turn it off here. You can clear your history from here and get it all out of there. And then of course your trash, you can have it automatically delete your trash when you throw something in the dustbin there. Then it will automatically delete it after X amount of days. And you can also do the same with temp files. So that's kind of a nice feature too. So if you want to turn those on, you can do that, and then they'll automatically delete after 30 days of being deleted or thrown away. And then of course you can hit the little down arrow here and change your interval to like 14 or 17, 7 days, 6, 1 day, even an hour. So you got a lot of choices there. So nice to have that as well. And then of course you can directly delete temp files and empty your trash right here as well. And then you have a diagnostics. So if you kind of regretted the decision about having automatic problem reporting turned on during the install, you can undo that decision right here and just turn that off, and then it'll not send problems anymore. However, automatic problem reporting is very helpful for the Fedora team, so it does help them improve their product. So if you don't find it annoying at all, which I never do, then I'd recommend just leaving that on so that they can receive debugging information in case you run something and it crashes on you. That can kind of speed up the process of people getting them fixed. So always a good thing. And then here we have our sound settings. So here's where you can set your different sound, your output for your sound, and the little test button there.
Front, left, front, right.
Didn't know I could make that voice, did you? And then our input the same way. You can set your microphone and so forth here. Then we have our alert sounds. By default, we got the click, and then the string sound, swing, and a hum. So click is the default, and then our power settings, of course, and balanced is the default here, and then our screen blanking is set for 5 minutes. Typically, I'm going to set that to 15 minutes, sometimes never. Automatic suspend is off by default, and I'm good with that. And then the display settings here, so if you want to set your display resolution and refresh rate is all right here. Orientation, typically landscape is what you would want it on unless you got a vertical monitor for some reason. You can change it there. And then our scale by default is 100%, which is what I would recommend unless you got some special setup. You also got your nightlight settings, if you like a warmer screen at night. And then here we have our mouse settings, so you can do your left and right here and test your settings. And then you got the little animation here with the bear, and when you double click, left click, then you get both targets lighting up, and then the single click you get just the outside. And then the same with the right click button, it'll both for double click and one for the single click. And then with your mouse button, same thing, double click and single click, the target will show you. And then you can scroll. So when you scroll your middle mouse button, if you have one on your mouse, then that'll let you test your scrolling right there. So a pretty handy little thing there. Nice. And then of course you can adjust your mouse speed here if your cursor's not moving fast enough, you can crank it up, or if it's too fast, you can back it off. And then our keyboard settings, typically I leave these all at their defaults, and then you can add printers here if you would need to do that. All you do is hit the unlock, authenticate, and then it'll, in most cases, auto-detect unless you have some kind of funky printer that's maybe not Linux compatible for some reason. And then our regional settings, accessibility, user settings, and here you can change your avatar, of course, hit unlock and authenticate, and then we can choose a default pick for our avatar by clicking the little pen or pencil, and then we'll just go with like a putty tat. There we go. Looks just like me too, same profile. So, excellent. And then if you want to log in automatically, you can set that right here with this little toggle, and then that'll boot you right into your environment. Every time you turn on your computer, you don't have to log in. But if you don't want other people getting on your computer, then I would probably leave that off. And then of course our default apps here. So here, for example, if we wanted to change our default video player from the Gnome player to VLC, I can just select this and then select VLC media player, and then that'll change our default player, so when I double click on a video, it'll launch in VLC player instead of Gnome. So these are where you can set your defaults. If you have a different web browser like Chrome or Chromium, you can change it here and so forth. And then our date and time settings, automatic by default, which is good. And typically I go with the defaults, and I like the 24-hour as well. But what if you like showing the seconds up there? Where do you do that? Well, I'll show you how to do that in a minute. So here we have our about settings, which kind of shows us about our hardware. So how much memory we're running, our processor, disk capacity, shows we're running Fedora Linux 37 64-bit and using the Wayland Windows system. Cool. And GNOME version not available. That's kind of weird, but it's actually GNOME 43, so I think we're good there. And so about this clock, what do we want to do there? So we can go into our activities here, and in our search button I'm going to type in tweaks, and it's not installed by default, so here it's showing us, giving us an option to install that through the Software Center, and I'm just going to do that because tweaks is a pretty handy thing to have, and so I'm just going to add that in there, and then that'll allow us to do little things like tweak our clock there and some various settings, which is really handy. So it's installed, and I'm just going to hit open, and that'll open our tweaks, and also showing that the extension manager has moved. And so here we got our general and appearance, so we can tweak our appearance a little bit better. Then we have our font, keyboard, mouse settings, and here we can tweak it a lot better here. Again, you can get a little more drilled down, and even set your keyboard for Emacs input if you're an Emacs kind of guy. And then our top bar, this is kind of what I was interested in for the clock. So here we have our clock here, and you can turn on weekday, show the date, and also the seconds. So we can click that, and then the seconds show up here. And if for some reason you don't like the date showing up, you can turn that off here. But maybe you want the weekday, so you can turn that on. There you go. And then you can even turn on the week numbers. And that actually is on the calendar, so that'll put the week numbers on your calendar app that we were in earlier. I'm going to turn off the weekday and turn the date back on, because I kind of like that. But if you like a weekday with it, why not? You got lots of room up there. So, cool. And now, window title bars. Nice. So here, those annoying buttons being gone, tweaks will solve that. So we go in here, and here you can see maximize and minimize are toggled off. And for me, that's really annoying, so I'm going to toggle those back on, and you can see that they have appeared now back up into the window. So now if I want to enlarge it, I can enlarge it. or bring it back down or minimize it. So awesome. Glad to see that back. Cool. So tweaks, well worth it. Having GNOME tweaks for those two reasons alone, for me, are worth the few seconds it takes to download that. Easy peasy. We have default Windows settings here, which I think all the defaults are pretty good. I don't think I would change anything there. So very good. And now that I got my minimize and maximize back, I'm double happy. So that covers tweaks. In fact, I think that covers pretty much everything. So there we go. Fedora 37, a sneak peek. Actually, this is Fedora 37 Beta Release Candidate 1.6. Yes, which is practically the real deal. Fedora 37 is going to be out in just a couple weeks, and I can't wait to go check it out as well. But I think this is pretty much what you'll see. I'm pretty sure 1.6 is probably just about as close to prime time as you can get without being prime time. And so my thoughts, what do I think? Well, I think from this short little review, 37 is looking really great. I haven't really researched to see if there's anything really super new that's totally different from 36. If there is, I will definitely be back to point that out when the official 37 release is out. But I really like the way this is looking. 43 is integrated really nicely. We got the latest kernel in there, 6.06. Really glad to see that, looking beautiful. Didn't seem to be any issues at all with the Fedora 37 repos. So they're looking good. Everything looks like it's just right on track here. I was actually kind of impressed that the non-free RPMFusion was installed by default. If I was going to put something in the suggestion box, I would say add in the free too, and not just non-free. But maybe that's part of their codec thing. They kind of dissed themselves with the codecs and kind of said we're not going to do codecs anymore. And so apps like VLC Player have all kinds of cool codecs that are installed when you install VLC Player, like the H.264 and all that. So it's possible that maybe that was the reason, probably a little bit of legal jitters there. So definitely not faulting them for that, but if they don't have a legal problem with it, I would recommend putting that back in by default. So anyways, easy peasy to install like I showed you earlier. I think if I were the devs, I would have the maximize and minimize buttons turned on by default as well. But maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm just an old fart. And maybe nobody uses them anymore. I don't know. But I do. So anyway, easy enough to restore. But Fedora is absolutely one of my favorite RPM-based distros here because it is so reliable, and like I've said in the past, these RPM distros like Fedora are kind of like the best of both worlds with Arch and Debian. Debian has older stuff, so you're kind of giving up new software, but you're gaining stability, and Arch gives you cutting-edge stuff, but sometimes you can not be so stable, although that's really kind of rare. I rarely ever have problems in Arch, but the advantage of Arch is that you get access to the AUR. Any software on the planet that exists for Linux is probably in the AUR, so I really like that, and that really kind of spoils me. However, Fedora, you get the stability of Debian, plus you get the cutting-edge software. Maybe not as much as you get out of the AUR, but if you're a normal user, you'll probably have access to everything you can imagine anyway. And then if you go beyond that point, then maybe you might want to think about Arch. You'll never go wrong with the stability in Fedora. I've used Fedora as a daily many times, and I would never hesitate to use it again as a daily anytime. In fact, I do have it installed on a couple laptops, and I just love it, and I never have issues with it. And it's really easy to upgrade too, so that's not a big deal either. So Fedora, definitely, as always, this beta, wow, nothing crashed on me. So double thumbs up. And with that, I hope this review was helpful. And if it was, don't forget to hit that thumbs up and hit subscribe. And we'll see you next time.